science of storytelling. And I am not a scientist, so I'm a storyteller, so I will do my best to answer the sciencey questions, but promise that you won't make them too hard. I'll tell you more about Engage Corvallis after we hear our ghost story. I just want to do some high-level stuff real quick. You're welcome to take photos of any slide. And we love engaged learners. And just thank you to the folks who are organizing tonight. And you're welcome to ask questions along the way. If we can't get to them right away, then we'll save them for the Q&A at the end. Okay. Can we get the slide? Next slide.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
There we go.
We'll just do it like that the whole time. Slide, slide, slide. Okay, so is there anybody here who's been on one of our ghost and true crime tours? I don't think so. Yes, not yet, not yet. Does anybody know which building in Corvallis Lillian McElroy Taylor is said to haunt? Any guesses?
The Majestic.
Oh, that's a great guess. It is a theater, but it's not the Majestic.
Whiteside?
The Whiteside, yeah. So Lillian McElroy Taylor is said to haunt the Whiteside Theater, and I'll tell you more. So the story goes, she was exceptionally good at her job in the 1920s, in the late 1920s, playing this very complicated instrument you see here. It's a Wurlitzer organ, but that's a little bit of a misnomer. It's, as you can see, it's basically just a giant switchboard that makes it possible for one person to effectively play a symphony's worth of instruments. And she was really, really good at it. And this was in an era when women could basically be teachers, nurses, secretaries, service workers, or arm candy. And this renowned, to be renowned and widely respected as a woman during this time was nearly impossible, yet Lillian was very respected. She would have been a household name in Corvallis. Literally every person knew who she was. However, that respect was attached to her very unique skill set. So she was playing this music for the silent films at the Whiteside Theater. They accompanied the silent films. So when Talking Pictures started, this was a big problem because they didn't need an organist anymore to play. So at the end of the 1920s, her services were no longer needed. She lost relevance basically 1 year into the Great Depression, 1930, and had no other path to the kind of esteem that she was accustomed to. So this left 47-year-old Lillian really depressed, and then she found out that her husband had been cheating on her. And one night at 3 a.m., this led to a murder-suicide that ended both the lives of Lillian and her husband, and eventually led community members to suspect that she is one source of the many strange things that happen at the Whiteside Theater. So now, hopefully you're curious to hear more about strange things that happen at the Whiteside. So I want to ask, was it easy to pay attention to that story?
Yeah.
Okay, saying nods. Yes. Tonight we're going to talk about the science of why that is and how applying that science can end up making a difference to our community. So, next slide, please. Okay, so why did a story hold your attention better than a timeline of dates? The thesis tonight is basically that a story is not just entertainment, it is a cognitive infrastructure for memory and curiosity and eventually civic engagement. So here's where we're going tonight. Next slide, please. This is our roadmap. So first we'll talk about why stories work. What is the neuroscience of memory? And then how curiosity amplifies learning. And then how spooky things enhance memory consolidation. And then finally we'll understand how memory retention leads to meaning making that can become civic engagement. Next slide. So how do stories impact memory recall? Narratives fundamentally change how the brain encodes and retrieves information. So there was an fMRI brain imaging study at the Center of Neuroscience, UC Davis, and they showed that the hippocampus, which is the little green part lit up here, the hippocampus is the brain storyteller, and it connects separate, disparate events into a single narrative. So there's this 2021 study from the Dynamic Memory Lab at UC Davis that showed that we can better remember the details of each event if they form a coherent narrative. So if I had said to you when we were talking about Lillian that one ghost of the Whiteside is said to be Lillian McElroy Taylor, a well-known vaudeville performer who played the Wurlitzer organ from 1922 to 1930, became depressed after losing her job, and in 1931 shot her cheating husband and then herself. One, there aren't as many details to remember. And two, the uncontextualized information, the fact that it's not a narrative, means that you'd be less likely to remember. So the fMRI scans in this study showed that by contextualizing Lillian's life, nested in the greater realities of what was going on in the 1920s, the depression, the move from silent films to talking pictures, and then the effects of patriarchal society on women's lives in that decade, increases the likelihood that you'll remember all of the components more readily. To say that in a more sciencey way, when the fMRI subjects in this study recalled stories that formed a coherent narrative, the hippocampus activated more information about the next layer of detail than when recalling non-connected stories. So basically, by sharing historical details in tours via contextualized, interconnected stories, in the case that we're talking about tonight, ghost stories, means that listeners will remember more of the total detail set. So, why do we care if people remember the stories? Now is a great time to tell you about Engage Corvallis. Next slide. So what is Engage Corvallis? I'm going to start by explaining why we care so much that people remember the stories that they hear on the local historic tours that we've been giving for almost 4 years, almost exclusively downtown in Corvallis. Engage Corvallis gives tours to fulfill its mission, which is to increase the number of people working on problems that make or break community wellness. And some people ask, well, how does a tour do that? We think that knowing local stories is really critical to a sense of shared identity. And when people know a local story, they feel a sense of belonging in the place. And then from that belonging, they feel a responsibility to engage in the kind of work that makes and keeps our communities really great. So this is why we care that people remember the stories that we hear. And you already know now that we help ensure memory by clarifying the narratives that underlie all of these historical facts. There are a few other memory helpers. Next slide, please. So how does curiosity amplify learning? So more fMRI, this is another study out of UC Davis, the Center for Neuroscience, although different authors on this study. So they found that when people are in a state of curiosity, they are both better at remembering the contextualized details, and they are more likely to pick up details that have not been contextualized. So have any of you noticed that the first sentence I've spoken about each slide has been a question? Now you know why. Priming your brain to get curious means you're more likely to remember both the answer to the questions that I'm asking you and the little stuff that's going on around that. Or as Matthias Gruber, who was the postdoc researcher and the first author on this study, said, curiosity may put the brain in a state that allows it to learn and retain any kind of information, like a vortex that sucks in what you were motivated to learn and also everything around it. We invoke curiosity on tours in a way that also, in addition to invoking the curiosity and making your learning stronger, leads to an emotional experience. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so next slide, please. So how do ghost stories amplify learning? Ghost stories are curiosity machines. They involve mystery, incomplete information, emotional stakes. So spooky storytelling can feel like fluff, but actually it's not. It's a precision tool for inducing optimal learning states. Now we will talk about how the emotional states that invite curiosity also help enhance memory retention. Next slide. Okay, so how's your imagination working today? We're not to Friday yet, right? There's a little bit left. Good. So imagine yourself walking through Yellowstone National Park, and if you're far away, I'll just describe what's on the screen here. So we have a field with some big rivers and some smaller rivers, and there are some bison grazing alongside the stream. So imagine yourself walking through Yellowstone National Park. Suddenly you notice a herd of bison grazing the nearby plains. In your excitement, you take a quick photo, wanting to share the experience with your friends back home. This image that we're looking at here comes from the Reinhardt Neuroscience Lab at Boston University, no more UC Davis. And the doctoral student, Chen-Yang Leo Lin, worked on answering the question, why does the brain hang on to some memories and not others? So this illustration and the study demonstrated that emotion also has the sort of vortex effect that curiosity has. Events in proximity to emotion, so in this case, the salient event of seeing the magnificent bison, cause the surrounding events to be remembered more clearly. And you can see in this photo here, I hope I'm not stealing my own thunder, but you can see that the strong event in the middle, which is the larger stream, is connected to the events that happened right around it, the events in the past, the smaller stream, and the events in the future, the smaller stream on the other side. So said differently, a strong event can enhance weak memories that were encoded before and after it, as illustrated by the water leaking from the strong event river into the weak event streams. So the salient event, the bison, creates a temporal penumbra lasting several hours both before and after the event. So while entirely anecdotal and not a controlled study, we see this pattern play out on tours. At the end of every tour, we ask people, what do you think you're going to remember that you heard today or tonight? And on our Ghost and True Crime tour, the top 2 recalls are, one, a hate crime that took place in 1906, and is the second stop of the tour. So by the time we're asking people this question, they haven't heard that, they've heard lots of other stories since then. And the second one is a ghost of a man who died by suicide, which is the second to last stop on the tour. So they're also not just saying, I guess the thing you just told me. So the recency and emotional salience went out. Ghost stories increase memory retention of historical events to which they are attached because the uncertainty triggers curiosity, and the emotions involved are the strong events that enhance retention of the surrounding details. We also create emotional strong events on tours by partnering with local businesses to give away prizes. So on tours, we regularly ask questions before we reveal details, and now you know that this triggers curiosity. And whoever first answers correctly wins a prize, and winning is an emotional event, as demonstrated by a couple of these studies, actually, as is not winning. Also, think of all the times you've not won. Also an emotional event. Whether you are the winner or the witness, we hope that this curiosity-studded, emotionally salient moment helps attendees to better recall surrounding information. And I've already told you why we want them to remember, and how we use narrative, invoke curiosity, and maximize emotion to ensure that people remember the stories that we hope will lead to the sense of identity and belonging and responsibility to community. We aren't the only group with this agenda. Next slide, please. Okay, so from which scientific journal do you think this 2019 article came from? The title is The Storytelling Brain, How Neuroscience Stories Help Bridge the Gap Between Research and Society. Anybody have a guess? Yes. I mean, if you are skilled at reading web addresses and close enough to the screen, guess what? You win a prize. So see me at the end. We've got prizes for you. Good job. It's prize time. Yes, it was from the Journal of Neuroscience. So this entire article is almost a mirror of this talk tonight. The whole article, the very, very long article, lectures scientists about the importance of including narrative and emotion when communicating their research if they want to get people to care about it, and describes in detail how they should do that. They also highlight the way that storytelling can bridge science and society. And at Engage Corvallis, we operate with the understanding that storytelling can gift listeners persistent memories, and these memories can cause perspective shifts after revealing how history has created society. So the implication for local history is that raw data and a list of facts is pretty forgettable, but story can encode memories, and in turn, those memories can make space for meaning making. So let's talk about what can happen in the meaning making. Next slide, please. Okay, have any of you heard this quote before? Those of you who can see this screen, have you heard this quote before? At least one, couple, yes, I will just read it. In the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand. We will understand only what we are taught. This is by Baba Dayom, who is a conservationist. Does anybody know what country he's from? The guesses. Good, that's a great guess. It's not India. Any continent guesses? I love all this deep thinking. Yes, Africa. You get a prize also. Prize winners. Yeah, so Baba Dayom was a Senegalese ecologist and conservationist from Africa. So he's the one who's this quote is attributed to. So at Engage Corvallis, we hope that by teaching people the stories of this place, that it will help them understand it and love it so that they will be inspired to engage in solving the problems that are fundamental to the well-being of our community. Even ghost and true crime stories, and maybe especially these stories, have the power to make our community stronger. Next slide, please. Okay, so haunted history for the common good. So the way that ghost and true crime tours, and really all of the Engage Corvallis adventures that we offer, because we use the science of storytelling in every tour that we put on, not just the ghost and true crime tours, the way that they help improve Corvallis, aka how the sausage is made. First, we craft a narrative to help listeners best encode and retrieve information. We prime curiosity to maximize detail recall. We focus on emotional salience to increase recall. And at Engage Corvallis, this means that we don't shy away from the tough stuff. So almost all of our tours have a sort of social justice element and talk about fears and injustice and loss. There's also inspiration and heroism too. And then don't forget the emotional experiences of prizes, or not prizes. And then we teach people so that they can understand more deeply and love Corvallis and be inspired to contribute. And then we ask attendees to teach the stories to the people in their lives, both to help them become embedded as community knowledge, to make our community stronger, and then much to help the stories become more widely known, because if we could have a full tour every single day, not even counting holidays and snow days, it would take 7.5 years for every person in Corvallis over the age of 10 just to know 1 hour, just one tour. And I think we have 7 or 8 tours at this point. So we really always encourage people to spread the stories. Okay, so given that I want to strengthen this information in your brains, who can guess what I'm going to do next? It's reward time. Next slide, please. So as a reward for being here tonight or watching online, we want to give you a 20% off code for any upcoming tour that you like. So you can take a picture of the screen if you want to remember it. There's also a QR code to scan. And now is the time to think about any questions that you might want to ask. While I talk about what's coming up next, I will pass around an email sign-up sheet if you want to be, or maybe I'll get help to pass around an email sign-up sheet. This pen is not so squirrely. Great, okay. If you write legibly, you will be added to our email list. It is the only way to be added to the email list. Actually, just kidding, you can put yourself on there somehow. Okay, so opportunities, what's coming up next? Your opportunities to learn and understand and love Corvallis by coming on a tour actually start tomorrow. So on the first Friday of every month, we do a tour called Meet Your Streets. And this is a tour that's different every time. It's a kind of a hot off the presses. It's whatever we've been researching, so it's something that's on its way to becoming a tour, and it's the details of that. So it's first Friday of every month, so mark your calendars if you can't make the one tomorrow, and you don't have to spend the 20% off code on that. The reservations are free. You can use the code, which if you can't see the screen, I'll just say is 500 WS for Women Scientists 2026, 500 WS 2026. And to come on any of the Corvallis Chronicles tour this spring, this is a tour, I think the next one's April 11th, and we talk about this is a tour that's offered all year long, and we talk about major changes that shaped the face of Corvallis. And then you could also use it on any of the beer history tours that end with a tour of the Oregon Trail Brewery, and also of obviously a tasting of what they create there, after you learn about how floods and gold miners and prohibition shaped Oregon's early beer scene. I think the next beer history tours are the 11th and 17th. And if you're ready for a deep dive, if you want to take a deep dive on downtown history, you can get season tickets to a 7-part series called Sidewalk Secrets. It starts April 21st, and it's Tuesdays at 4:30, or if that's too early, you can also, and you want to make new friends, there's a class through Parks and Recreation that's the 6 o'clock on the Tuesdays, both starting on the 21st. And I think both those links are on our website. And then, of course, the Full Moon Ghost and True Crime Tour. If you don't pay attention to the moon, I will tell you that it was full yesterday. And so the tour just happened. And if you want to hear the ghost and true crime stories of Corvallis, you'll have a chance on the next full moon, which is at the end of this month. And don't be fooled by corporate imitators. Hopefully none of you know about this yet, and none of you have experienced this, but there is a corporation that goes to every community in the US that has a ghost tour. And they used to steal the script, but now that AI exists, they just generate an AI script. They go to any market that's primed for people wanting to go on ghost tours, and then they use a lot of dollars to be the top-ranked person when people search for things to do in Corvallis or goes to a Corvallis. And then they allow you to book a tour, whether or not they have a guide scheduled for that night. And then, when you show up, if there is no guide, then good luck getting your money back. You call the overseas place and get your money back. And then if there is a guide, they will hopefully exuberantly read you the AI script that they have about history that didn't actually happen in Corvallis, full of lots of errors. So don't be fooled by that one. Okay, so thanks for considering becoming a subject of the experiment where we use narrative and invoke curiosity and emotion to help you learn and understand and love Corvallis. And thanks for showing up tonight and participating in community. Oh, and for being civically engaged. And thanks, Susan, for organizing and for all of the 500 Women Scientists leadership. We do have time for questions, and the prize winners, you get to pick between $5 off at the Corvallis Museum, not $5 off, $5 off means free. So a free entry, worth $5 at the Corvallis Museum. If you are interested in a new hair place, we have $10 off coupons for your first service at the Raw Hair Society. They're a very sustainable hair salon. Or 10% off at the Plant Posse Art and Gift Shop on the north end of downtown on 2nd Street. Okay, so there's time for questions, and would love to hear from you what you're taking away from tonight, what you think will stick with you besides the discount code. So you can just raise your hand or call out and just leave at least 2 minutes for people to think of any questions that they have.
Was that the last slide? Yes, please.
Yeah, questions or what you learned, what you think you'll take with you.
Have you been a Corvallis person for a while?
The question is, have I been a Corvallis person for a while? I have lived in Corvallis since 2018, so whoever's fast at math could tell us.
Not very long.
Yeah, not 1 year, but not 40. We get a lot of folks on our tours who have lived in Corvallis a really long time, and they often say that they always learn something new on the tours. They've never heard that before. I think probably my favorite tour story is we had back-to-back tours of the same type, and they ended at a drinking place where the tour ended with a beer. And the first tour, there was no one on it who'd been in Corvallis for less than 40 years. Wow. And they all said, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe I've lived here my whole life for several decades and I didn't know this. And then we ended at the place, and then I said, well, there's another tour, I have to go, see you guys later. And then when the next tour arrived at the place, they were still there talking to each other. It was so great, really beautiful. Yeah. Are there any other questions, or really it's so helpful to know what did you absorb, what will you take with you? Anybody's brave enough to share what they learned?
I mean,
yeah.
I teach literature and language arts, like reading and stuff, and this is just so interesting about how stories, right? If you tell them as a story, they're going to remember it a little better. So hearing all that science behind that is just really, really interesting to me.
Okay, so learning the science behind educating people and how it might apply to literature and language art. I will tell you about all of these studies. They do go into that. Almost every study references what are the applications for what we've learned through this study. And they will reference two things, teaching in the classroom and then the neuroscience of what it's like to work with people who have dementia and that sort of thing. So as memory's fading, how to apply these do I want to call them tricks? Not really, but that's the word that's coming to mind. So, yeah. Techniques, great, yes. How to apply these techniques when you're trying to preserve memory over a long period of time. Any other, something people learn, something you'll take with you? Yeah.
The inquiry-based learning and the curiosity. So sometimes I also teach, and I ask both my students what their superpower is, but then when I go online, I call it curiosity. Because it turns anything to a game or a puzzle, and then it makes it fun and memorable. So yeah.
So how exactly precisely curiosity turns into a superpower?
Yeah.
Okay. Any just make a little bit more space if there's anybody else who has something that they think they'll take away or something that you learned. Okay, for fun then, let's have fun. I mean, we were already having fun, but we'll have some more fun. So, brought some trivia questions for you. So this is uncontextualized information. So hopefully since we don't have the power of narrative, hopefully this is an emotional and curiosity evoking experience that will help you remember the answers to these questions when you go home. Should we shout out? Yeah, I think we'll shout out. We don't have to make teams. What was the name of the town across the river from Corvallis that washed away in the Great Flood of 1861? Does anybody know? If you ever looked at a map of Corvallis, you might see there's a natural area there. It's called the Blah Blah Natural Area, named after the town that was there before. Have you seen this? Where's our Jeopardy music? Okay, I will tell you, it's Orleans. So if you look at the map, you'll see the Orleans natural area, and it's called that because there was a town in 1851, established the same year as Corvallis, called Orleans, and it was across the river. And a lot of people who come on tours, especially if they're not from Corvallis, they'll ask us, why, I've been to riverside towns all over the US. There's always towns on both sides of the river, or civic structures on both sides of the river. What's going on with Corvallis? In 1861, there was the worst flood in recorded history. Not if you're an insurance company. If you're an insurance company, you didn't pay out very many dollars, so then it's not on the list. But if you are a person who studies hydrology, it's the worst flood in recorded history. And it completely obliterated the town of Orleans. And if you've been here when it's flooded, you know how far the river goes in that direction, that the highway gets shut down. And so they did not rebuild the town of Orleans. Okay, from which hill was the granite quarried for use in constructing the current courthouse? So in 1888, they quarried a whole bunch of blocks of granite out of this hill in Corvallis. And if you can't think of that as something that you would already have in your memory, what hills do you know about in Corvallis?
Bald Hill.
Bald Hill's the one. That's a great guess. Not the place though. Witham Hill, we got it. Good job. Yeah, Witham Hill. So this quarry actually still exists at the top of Witham Hill. It is someone's backyard, and you're not invited to go in their backyard, but you can walk the edges of the quarry. There is a road that goes around the edge of the quarry. So if you go up on Witham Hill, I can't remember the name of the road, Fern something. It's this tiny little hill, and you can walk up. And if you're looking for it, you can see oh yes, this person's house is the front side of a quarry, and you can see the quarry cut out of the cliff, and all of the blocks cut out of the cliff are now in the foundation of the courthouse. You can see a picture of them laying that foundation at the Corvallis Museum, I believe in the education room. Okay, in what year did it become illegal to build with wood in downtown Corvallis because of fire risk? And I'll give you within 10 years, plus or minus 10 years. Everybody's so afraid to guess. 1960. There's no punishment for getting it wrong. I'll give you a little clue. The fires had to do with the fires that led up to this moment had to do with the use of candles and that sort of thing. They often started in bars where people were not paying attention to what could happen with something that could start a fire. 1990, that's close. 1990, that's within 16 years. So 1906. 1906 was the year that the city of Corvallis said, you know what, this is ridiculous. Don't make anything with flammable materials anymore. We're not going to allow that. You have to build with brick. Which is part of the reason we have such a historic looking downtown, is because of this law. Okay, what is the purpose? This might be a gimme. What is the purpose of the metal rings in the sidewalk across the road from the museum outside of Wade Hardware? Yes, the horse tether. So if you haven't noticed them before, if you're ever walking out in front of Wade Hardware, look down at the ground. They've been preserved. The sidewalk has been updated, but they preserve them because they've been there for a very long time. This one might be a little harder, or not. We'll see where you're involved in the community. So the peninsula south of the museum, at the confluence of the Willamette and Mary, so just right down here, is called Shavala Point. Shavala is the Kalapuya name for a very important dietary plant with yellow flowers.
Tarweed.
What is the English name for this plant? Good job, it's tarweed. Ding, ding, ding. You got it.
And it's because the whole plant feels like tar.
Uh-huh.
It's all sticky.
This is a prize-worthy answer. Yes. Okay, everybody's getting
And
prizes.
they ate the seeds.
And they ate and continue to eat the seeds of the tarweed plant. They're very nutritious. Okay, we've got 2 more to go. What was the name of Corvallis when Joseph Avery platted the streets in 1851? It was not Corvallis. The name changed 2 years later. Marysville! Good job! Yeah, so it's called Marysville. We don't actually know why. There's a lot of stories in the record. Why is it Marysville? After Joseph Avery died, there were 2 women who named Mary who stepped forward to say, "Oh, he definitely named it after me." Some people said he named it after his wife, whose name was Martha. So maybe. The theory that I've heard that seems to make the most sense: Joseph Avery was not the first colonizer in this area. There were a lot of French fur traders here before that. And they, on maps in the late 1700s, Mary's Peak is on there as St. Marie's Peak. And allegedly the French called this area, the term that they use in the literature is neighborhood. So this neighborhood was called Marysville. And so they think maybe Joseph Avery just anglicized the name to Marysville. However, this was problematic because Marysville, Oregon, and Marysville, California were on the same stagecoach route, and so the mail got messed up a lot. And so eventually they said, okay, we can't deal with this mail issue anymore. We're trying to establish this brand new town, and we have this big problem. So he came up with the name Corvallis. It comes from Latin, cor and valle, pushed together. Cor is heart, and valle is valley. So the heart, that's why we have so many heart of the valley things around here. That's what Corvallis means, heart of the valley. Okay, last question. Oh, this didn't used to be quite so contentious when we came up with these questions. Camp Adair quarried lots of material to widen the roads to fit military vehicles. So Camp Adair, if you don't know, in the 1940s was a military base up the road, and something that they needed to do was update the existing roads so that military vehicles could fit on them. So they found a place to get the materials to do that, and they quarried a bunch of material. And that quarry was ultimately repurposed into what? Does anybody know? Yes, the dump. The Coffin Butte landfill there was a hole that existed because of taking out the material to build the roads for Camp Adair. And now that the hole is there, they started filling up the hole with garbage. Oh, I should probably say that one a little sooner in these times, in these ever-changing times. we don't want to end on a low note. So thanks so much for coming tonight, everybody. Hopefully you take something home with you, like some memory. And if you want a prize, come up and pick what you want to get.
I want to know if Mrs. Avery killed Mr. Avery.